Welcome back to the Podmen, the wrestling podcast we bring you each and every week on the Dynamo Podcast Network. Head over to YouTube, smash that subscribe and bell notification button. Share and like the videos to support the podcast. Audio versions of the show are also available on Anchor. And tonight, joining me, as always, my hot tag partner, the D-O-double-G. Jay, how are we?
Oh, fuck yeah. Fresh out of a Chinese shipping container, done with prawn crackers for the week, sat down, got 4 beverages beside me, got a brand new whiskey I haven't tasted before, getting ready to get lit and fucked up for your viewing pleasure.
And a beautiful shirt on.
Oh, yeah, listen. 40th anniversary this week. Never forget.
Had to be mentioned. Also joining me, as always, Joe, the Beef Duignan. Joe, how are we?
All good, pal. The Lions squad was named yesterday, so I'm quite excited. Looking forward to that for the summer.
Just cover his ears here.
I seen the announcement. I didn't get into the detail of it. Was there more disappointment than there was surprise?
Not for me. Like a lot of Irish people were annoyed that Sexton didn't get picked, and were shocked at that. But
now Least himself.
Yeah. Well, I think the reasoning behind it was very good because, you know, he's 35, which as we know, in the world of competitive sport, it's not, you know, it's an elder statesman. And he's had an awful lot of issues with getting head knocks in matches. So I can see why they said, look, you know, and the South Africans are all monsters. So it was just for his own good as well as the good of the team that they didn't bring him, because he was probably going to end up having to miss a few matches because of it. So,
a good doctor over in Florida would solve that very quickly if you had a handful of cash.
I was thinking that, yeah. That brown envelope with enough cash in it, like
absolutely.
We can rebuild.
Yeah, no problem. We'll make you feel like getting in again, baby.
Jab.
Anyways, this is another unusual 4 Podmen, not our typical 4 men here present tonight. Ian is on a sabbatical. Dean is again negotiating with Spotify and Anchor for a bigger deal. But tonight we're here. We said we'd take a look back on the back of the Ultimate Warrior episode and the Managers episodes. We said we'd take a look at the one and only, the Macho Man Randy Savage, in an episode that we're calling From Macho to Madness. And Joe, this is really now, you've been chiming this to us now for a number of months now, pitching a Macho Man episode.
Well, yeah, look, I love the man. He was my first wrestling love and has remained my eternal wrestling love ever since. I used to get, just when you mentioned the Warrior one, just a personal little story here. A very good friend of mine, still to this day, was a huge Ultimate Warrior fan when we were kids. And anytime we went to fairs or parties, there was always someone doing face paint. And I was always really jealous that he was able to get his favorite wrestler's face paint. And I had to rock up and couldn't, you know, I wouldn't get the Warrior face paint because it wasn't my favorite, like, and couldn't get Macho Man face paint because what do you do with beard and sunglasses? Now that I say
big black glasses.
I should have demanded. Now, just when I say it, it was like, I should have actually demanded that. Just
Joe, that would have been awesome.
Put some sunglasses on me, and that'll do me. But look, I was a kid and just really jealous, and I think I used to get like Michelangelo from the Turtles or something.
Spider-Man, the classic. Do you want to be Spider-Man? I don't.
I've never liked Spider-Man, so no, I never would have got him.
I've visions of a Warrior fan and a Turtles fan walking around this fair.
You know, ironically, there's a Warrior Turtle. It's all come full circle.
Joe, you could have went down the road of Sting if you wanted to look miserable. Got his face paint. Isn't it weird to think that, like, how iconic the Macho Man was, and yet he didn't have face paint? Isn't it? Isn't that an interesting angle? Like that, it was like, you know, if go ahead, Joe.
Suppose it made up for the lack of color in his face with the clothes he wore. So, that might
With
be
every
it.
breath he fucking took.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how long the paint would have stayed on the face, in fairness, like, because he's hyped up from the promo, you know.
He
Dripping.
he didn't even give it a go during the Ultimate Maniacs. Like, you couldn't presume that's the time, you know. Nope.
Maybe Warrior gave him the heads up as to where it was going. So don't spend the money, you're wasting your time.
Don't get too into it.
Right, well, let's get into them. Let's get some housekeeping out of the way first. Obviously, born Randall Mario Poffo, born November 15th, 1952, Columbus, Ohio. Died May 20th, 2011, aged 58, tragically. Heart attack, which kind of led to a car crash into a tree, and passed away. Spouses, Miss Elizabeth, 84 to 92, and Lynn Payne, 2010. Obviously, a serious wrestling family here. The father, Angelo Poffo, and of course, the brother, Lanny, Leap and Lanny Poffo, also of the Genius fame. Career highlights: IC champ, heavyweight champ twice, King of the Ring, won the heavyweight tournament, and also Hall of Fame 2015. Won many, many other accolades around many other wrestling promotions. Also won a number of individual accolades with Pro Wrestling Illustrated and the Wrestling Observer. Was an absolute star and an absolute icon. Man, where do we begin with this, man? Joe.
He also dropped one of the greatest rap albums ever released there as well. That needs to be said. He did. He's also an audio star.
And a movie star.
And a movie star.
And a movie star.
3 minutes.
Joe, this is kind of your journey with the Macho Man. Me and Jay are kind of like managers and sidekicks to this one. Tell us, where did it all begin with the Macho Man for you?
Well, I can't be sure now. I have a dog shit memory. Ian will tell you that. Like
us.
But look, I can't tell you exactly when the moment was, but I know growing up, my entire wrestling memory is like him just, coming out and the arms out and spinning around and the cowboy hat, and I'm just being madly in love with him. And I as I said, it's hard for me to pinpoint it. Like, and now as an adult looking back, I can probably see that, it was the charisma, it was the colors, it was everything over the top. But when I look back now and I watch him, it might have been a lot of the way he moved in matches. There was no one like him. He was on the tiptoes a lot, and he just these real kind of bird-like movements where he'd be real kind of snappy and stuff like that with his head. Like, I just, and he was, and he wasn't a small guy, but he wasn't a giant. He wasn't a Hulk Hogan or any of these guys. And I think I was just enthralled that he wasn't the biggest man, yet he was kicking the piss out of them, like, and getting up to the top rope, which was rare back then too. Like, and that elbow drop, just every time I see it, I feel like I need to touch myself.
We call it looking out the little window every time he goes up. Like, there he is, looking out the little window again.
It's a bit early, Joe, for us to be taking a break on the podcast, but go ahead.
No, but just as I said, like, then when, like, as I said, we're talking about it. I think was it last week? It was, yeah. Sorry, in the last show about the Miss Elizabeth angle with Sherry. That's as I said, one of the most emotional moments in pro wrestling history. And his, like, for some reason, that match he had with Ric Flair sticks in my head. And of course, WrestleMania 3, of course, everyone talks about that match. I was too young at the time, but it's obviously looking back on it. And then of course his run with DDP in WCW, when everyone thought he was done and dusted, and he was gonna, especially WWE, who had stuck him on the commentator desk, but that's before that, saying he was done. Then he goes to WCW, brand new lease of life. And I didn't see that as a kid. That's all me going back as an adult and watching all that, because WCW wasn't readily available in Ireland. So seeing those, his run with the NWO, and as I said, that series he had with DDP was bloody fantastic. And the thing is, if you look back at a lot of the, his iconic moments, a lot of them are where he lost. WrestleMania 3, one of the greatest WrestleMania matches ever. He lost that one. That match with Flair, he lost. The match with Ultimate Warrior, he lost. He lost that series of DDP. You know what I mean? But everyone looks back at, when you talk about him, you look back on those matches very fondly. And it just showed the kind of guy he was, that business was bigger than him. And he innovated the whole planning a match. Now, he did a way to OTT with the planning of matches.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, it was like, I remember Steamboat was talking about that WrestleMania 3 match. And, Savage had sent him the list of the match, and he'd be quizzing him on it. He goes, what's step 23? And he'd be like, I'm trying to remember.
Ricky fucking Steamboat, pal.
Yeah, I know, yeah. And the thing is, and Steamboat was talking about, like, step 1 was lock up. And Steamboat was like, well, of course we're going to lock up. What the hell are you talking about? But that was, like you say, like you said that, Jay, it was meticulous, but it also showed that he had a lot of doubt in himself, that he didn't feel that he could go out and just wing it. And that he might have, doubted his talents or something like that, maybe.
There's another aspect to him with that respect. I often consider when men say that, and there's some men who say it, and some men who say he didn't do that with them. And I think there's an element of OCD about him. You look how meticulous his costumes were, and like you said, in the ring when he walked, even if he was just walking back to the turnbuckle and he didn't know cameras were on him, he walked like a velociraptor. Every second he was on. Like, we often say this, but. And you also made another mention there about how you were retrospectively a fan going back. I don't think he's one of the men where that doesn't matter. Every second of his career is timeless. Being there first time around or watching it when you just discover him, it doesn't matter. It's not like a Kennedy moment with the Macho Man. Whenever you discover him, that's fine by him.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, no,
he's not like other people.
Yeah, definitely that Mania 3 match anyway. When you go back and look at his matches, I mean, you can sit down and still enjoy them today as much as you did back then, really, I mean, they're just, and sometimes when you go back and look at them, you actually pick up a little bit more as you go along, stuff that you wouldn't have noticed,
I'm envious you watched them as a fan. I seen them as a child, not understanding what I was seeing. And it probably was because of his meticulous nature that it stuck so hard. Subconsciously you see shit that you won't visually see from the front of your brain. He's him.
WrestleMania 3 was kind of like that, wasn't it? Because obviously everything was kind of overshadowed in some respects with Hogan and Andre. That was the big ticket thing, if you like. And it's only when you look back at WrestleMania 3 and you actually have time to digest it and stuff like that. There was so much really good stuff on it, that match without a doubt was the match without a shadow of a doubt,
another aspect, that was probably him as well. That was he wasn't wrestling Ricky Steamboat in that match that night. He was wrestling Hogan 2 matches later. That's why he wanted it to go over so hard and perfect. He's like, I'm not letting that guy be better than me. I'm better than everything.
He brought even Steamboat. Didn't Steamboat go down to his house and all for a while to practice the match and everything? They spent time together practicing the match and everything, from what I read. Which is
I don't know about them physically practicing, but I did hear about where Macho would be quizzing him, going, "What's move 83?"
Yeah.
He'd have to try and remember what it was.
Yeah. Now apparently I was reading back during the week there when we were looking back for the episode that apparently they spent some time together before Mania, actually, working out the kinks and working out the actual match. You know what I mean?
It wouldn't surprise me, for someone to be planning something that, as Jay said, so meticulously, wouldn't surprise me. He said, "Look, I don't trust just having it in writing. Let's actually, go through it step by step.
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't go out and ad lib Shakespeare. Do you know what I mean? You don't get to be casting King Lear and then you don't worry about it. I got this, and then you're just standing there on stage or a soliloquy or a fucking oration. You're like, and then I went and bought a chicken roll in the Spars. What the fuck is that? Has he read the book? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I remember my earliest memory of him is I remember him winning the belt off Tito and watching that. I remember if I'm right in the match, Tito went to pick him up over the ropes to German him, and he just turned and he hit Tito with a metal thing or a nux or something that he had in his shorts, and he kind of fell down, and it was like nearly like a crossbody into a crossbody down, and got the pin on him, and the thing was in the tights, that kind of thing, the foreign object, and I always remember I felt terrible for Tito because I was a big fan of Tito Santana at the time. He was unbelievable. Loved all that Ariba stuff and all that. It was cool. And funny enough, sort of like they went back and forward still, but Tito, he had gone. Macho had moved on from at that stage. Once Macho got the belt, the fuse was lit on that rocket like a Halloween, and that was it. I was looking back this week, and I was looking at the build up to that WrestleMania 3 match, and there's not a lot of talk about how, like, he nearly broke Steamboat's neck with the bell and stuff like that, in the build up to the match and stuff like that, and my other memory after WrestleMania 3 was I thought when Steamboat got the belt, I thought we'd have a lot of Steamboat now. We'd have the belt for a while and stuff like that. And I remember it was about, I don't know, was it 3-4 weeks after that or something? Steamboat dropped the belt, I think, the Honky or something like that on was it a Superstars or a Wrestling Challenge or something like that? And I couldn't believe the belt was gone so quick. I was going, what the hell? We had this whole nearly year of a build-up for Steamboat, that nearly the broken neck. What were they calling on commentary time? The larynx. Yeah, he had damaged Steamboat's larynx and all. And Steamboat was working it with the voice. He could barely talk and all, And then I was thinking, whatever it was, 3 or 4 weeks later, I think it was, Steamboat dropped the belt to Honky out of nowhere on a weekly show. And I was thinking, what the hell, because at the time you wouldn't have known whether Steamboat was injured or none of this stuff kind of came out. Just lads came and went, Jay, I'm going to go to you because I know you'll want to take the Mega Powers.
Well, do you know what I mean? It's throughout that fucking early phase of his career, whether he was holding the belt and wrestling a program with bleeding Steamboat or Tito, he always had his eyes permanently fixated on one motherfucker who was the marquee name, and he addressed his career. He knew where he was going, and there was nothing going to stop him. And the Mega Powers thing, putting him with Hogan, like it was just it's like when you're taking somebody like Macho Man who's elevated himself over such a short period of time and using only his mouth, his promos were fucking fire. Anytime he opened his mouth, when he'd walk in and talk to Mean Gene, and he'd have a prop like a broom or a little bucket or a can or something, or just even him walking around the room cradling that little belt there, like he always stole the show with every fucking second. There was not one waste a second. Or bringing Liz in to tell her to shut up. Do you know what I mean? You don't talk, I'm the champ. I'm exercising the champ's prerogative. And you're like, oh, you brought her in. What are you doing, champ? And Mean Gene always playing the, hitting on Liz while he's talking to Randy, and him just looking at the burden with a little beady eyes, like just in the glasses always. And out there in a world of his own, and a world we needed badly. Like, he was the character we needed. You weren't getting your Hogan every week. You weren't getting your fix. He was the standard. He held the big belt for so long, and you were lucky. It was almost like you were treated to a Hogan promo once every 3 bleeding months, like, because he was off working on his fucking tan somewhere. But Macho was clocking in like a street sweep week in, week out, entertaining us. He was the guy, even when he wasn't the guy. And I mean, up until that point, we never really knew whether he was a heel or babyface. He decided on the week who he was wrestling, what he was. It didn't matter because he was over so hard anyway. And we can't walk out to that song and not be fucking over. It was like Caesar's triumphant fucking return to WrestleRama. Do you know what I mean? And him, even without the crown and scepter, lording himself, like, yeah. He was a star in his own head. He was already the champion of the world, and belts were just accoutrements. But when you got the Hogan and Macho Man, it was the Mega Powers in every respect, and still to this day, it'd be like them giving us a year-long program with Austin and The Rock, as opposed to skits between them and a little bit here and there. Like, there was nobody came close to them, and it was poetry in the ring. It was long-term writing. Like, I mean, he'd been going for Hogan for so long, and to have to stand beside him, and you knew the volatility of the man and his jealousy, which he portrayed so well on screen. Even as a fucking child, you could get it. You understood it. This was not complex storytelling, but it was apex storytelling. When 6 and 60-year-old can sit and look what's going on, we all knew we all knew it wasn't going to last forever. I mean, it was a marriage made in hell,
Yeah. I remember back then as well when, you know, that Tuesday Night Titans and stuff like that, when they brought him in as the, you know, the top free agent in the business, and all the managers were fighting over him, and then out of nowhere we got Elizabeth, you know, and all the managers were trying to him. And I think they repeated that kind of storyline a few times, didn't they, when new guys came in? Everyone kind of came in as the next top free agent, and the managers would be all, remember they used to do those sort of promos where like Bobby and Slick and all the lads, Jimmy,
yes, why should you be the manager?
Tried to sign these guys, and they used to sit and go, tell me why he should go to you and all this kind of thing.
They did it with Perfect, didn't they? They did it. There was almost like a bidding war for Perfect, the perfect athlete. Remember, he was one of the little programs with throwing the fucking touchdown pass and the 3-point hoop.
And throwing the towel, remember, and the golf and the whole lot and all. Like, it was brilliant. Like, and then, he used to try, the basketball from the other end of the court.
I remember he caught his own touchdown pass. He threw it, and then you just see him running, catching the ball, and you're like, wow.
And we didn't even question it. We thought it was legit.
Oh, why isn't he playing those other sports? He's clearly the best at everything. But again, it was almost like Macho Man kind of, he perfected how much you can do in 3 minutes with your mouth if you know where your mouth wants to take you as a physical aspect. And he ran with Hogan. Hogan, whether we want to admit it or not, some of us definitely don't want to admit it, but he had one of the best mouths in the business. But I mean, Macho made everybody look so rehearsed. When he came out there, it was like he was busting it off the top of his head, and I'm sure half the time he fucking was. Whereas everybody else was working on their script the night before and came in, and you can tell when some of these are patterning through something that they've rehearsed, and then you watch a man who's cutting live off his mouth, and you're like, this is going to be an interesting speech.
Now, just when you say that, Jay, I think like when you said he was just going in and winging it, like I'm convinced half the time he just spotted a prop on his, just as he was just off camera, went, oh, I'll bring that on, and just off shot.
Give me that.
Somehow incorporated in, like, you know what I mean? He was, you know, like I said, his like you look at any of his promos, and they're just sublime to watch. Like they're lunacy, like, but
lunacy.
Yeah, but lunacy, like that you just get drawn in by it.
Do you eat them up? Yeah.
Like everyone knows that famous, the cream of the crap and all this. You know what I mean? It's just amazing to watch him and listen to him.
I was only saying to Hot Tag off air, I often run my mouth about the huckster, you know, calling him a hot dog, because he is the color of a hot dog. He looks like an assembled cartoon animated hot dog. But it was only, I was watching a few promos to get jacked up before we came on the show, and lo and behold, what spills out of Macho Man's mouth like some fucking, you know, fountain of wonderment. You had to do it, Hogan. You had to come down and hot shot and hot dog while I was doing my thing, being the perfect athlete. You're like, that's where it came from.
And the gas thing at that time, there was only less than a handful of lads in there that were pale. Everyone was pretty bronzed up. You know? So it's just Hogan took it to another level. He didn't bother with the George Foreman grill, but he obviously slept on one.
He was like, the Dulux color chart for 80s pro wrestling is 47,000 shades of brown.
Yeah.
And then you got Hernandez, who's white or pink.
No, I don't think it was Dulux. I think it was Ron Seal, mate. That was definitely Stain. That was Stain.
That ain't washing off anytime soon. It's there still to this day.
No, again, it's one of them timeless feuds going back to Hogan Macho Man. If you could get a 3-disc DVD out of the year's program just on that singular, and you wouldn't be bored. I mean, as an entertaining as over as Hulk was, the spotlight was 50-50 there. You know what I mean? It was a payoff for the work the man had put in conscientiously over the 4 or 5 years previous to that. And to think that he started off in his father's outlaw promotion, again, his meteoric rise to the top so quickly was down to one person, him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he gave up a baseball career for it as well. Like this,
yeah,
he was. He got to the point where he had to pick one or the other. There is a baseball card of him somewhere. I think
there is, yeah, a rookie card or some shit like that.
Yeah, you know what I mean. So but it just shows the kind of athlete he was, and you could see that as I talked about the way he moved, and, you know, carried himself. He was just
He was like liquid, wasn't he? There wasn't one way. He was like liquid. There wasn't one wasted movement. He was his flow. Even when, like you said, looking out the little window when he came down, he hit that parallel and just dropped on them. It was just, oh, look at this man fly. Do you know what I mean?
I remember when Hogan was backstage tending to Liz. And I remember he came in, and all the accusations and all, and then he kind of went out of the camera angle. And the next thing, he just takes Hogan clean out with the belt and puts him right across the gurney. And I was thinking, and I was a Hulkamania fan, you know what I mean, back then and stuff like that. But I was just thinking, wow, he's after. It was just monumental. Hogan just went flying, and he took him out. He literally steamrolled him. You know what I mean? It was awesome,
Yeah.
like, you know.
No, I'd say there was. It wouldn't surprise me if there was genuine venom in that. You know what I mean?
Was not a fan of him.
No, because like if you look at it, like, and like it was as you said, Jay, Savage was on the rise, and Hogan, of course, saw him as a threat, like he did anyone, and he hitched his wagon to him. You know, hence the WrestleMania 4 bullshit, like that Hogan didn't need to be involved in. Then then the Mega Powers thing, and sure, even Hogan's big heel turn, Savage was involved as well. You know what I mean? It was him that he dropped the leg on.
Hogan is very astute as to who to stand beside when it's important. He's again. He knows who the spotlight's shining on, and he wants a little of that glow.
And most of those guys are clever enough to know where the bigger checks fall off the desk, so they need to stay close as well.
I would say it galled Hogan that one day he was going to have to work a program with him. Like I said, we know he was comfortable with the King Kong Bundys and the Andre the Giants of this world, but when you're looking at that, you're like, oh Christ, that's 2 years down the pike, and I've been getting away with charisma, and this guy is like the Leonardo da Vinci of our sport. What am I going to do?
Yeah, and that whole Mega Powers thing, it didn't run as long as we thought it was going to run. So maybe Hogan was saying, I've had enough of this lad.
He's getting too over. I'm hearing his name more than mine out there, and there's only so much we can do with audio in this particular decade. Get him out of my ring.
I'd say he was beginning to see that Savage was completely outshining him. And Savage had Elizabeth on his arm too. And I think Hogan was just like, if I keep letting this lad, keeping this guy in the main event scene, I'm going to sink. I need to bury him. And that's what he ended up doing, unfortunately.
And
don't work for me, brother.
And the funny thing about it is, if he had taken a different pathway, Hogan, it would have worked out a lot better for everyone, because he would have created so many more bigger stars who would have added to his value as well in a very different way, you know.
You've hit on the core of my hatred. There's a duality to how I feel about, Big Shot and hot dogging. He could have been the most vital ingredient in the stew we all love. And there's so many, as a byproduct, as an accidental aspect of his, and it's not his fault. It's how you grow up in that business. Like we've said many times before, in a locker room of sharks, it pays to have the biggest teeth, because it's you're in it for you. Get paid and get out. We know this. That's the business. That's the nature of the business, and that's how you keep the locker room stoked, and how they keep this heat and the feuds on TV. They don't realize it, but McMahon is playing the whole fucking thing like a puppet master. But the thing is, if he'd have been a bit more giving in his career to men on the way up, those men would have been champs in a company where, the perfect culmination of the Mega Powers going left and right isn't the destruction of the match in the program and making us choose which camp we're on. It happened at WrestleMania 7 with the audacity, and it was all Macho Man. I know Jim Hellwig didn't have any of the ability to be as subtle and sly in his workings. They're walking down with the kneelers with fucking Macho on one and Warrior on the other, walking down to the ring, not running, simply because Macho said, we're going to have to do something that you've never done before, and you're going to have to consider every step when you get into the ring with me. I need you to fear me more than you feared every other man, simply because it'll make you look super over when your foot's on my chest at the end. 2, there means much more than this on the back of Warrior's gear came straight out of Macho Man's head. Them 2 men were sick of the fact that guy had just dropped back in and into the business that he hadn't been week in, week out and in. And he was in a belt situation. And to put the heavyweight championship on the back of your pants in a retirement or retirement match with the words means much more than this, is a fucking broadside in your match up. Do you know what I mean? Why are we in the middle of the card when he's at the end and he hasn't aired it? We need to just drape this match for the insider wrestling fan as to what it is. We are over, but we're still not at the end of the night in a retirement match. This is my career being wrapped up in the WWE, and it's happening in the middle of a card when there's a belt match, which really doesn't fucking matter. Insane. But again, this is logical business. Vince McMahon was doing the business he knew, but Macho Man was doing the business he knew. He usurped the main event and made his own event the main event. Even the dilution of finishers. Have you ever seen somebody take 4 fucking little windows and kick out? That doesn't happen. Who sacrifices their finisher that has been their finisher, which is one? It's got to be a top 3 finisher in the history of the business. That big elbow. I mean, it's up there with the leg drop. Only it's about fucking 16 feet higher down. You know what I mean?
And way more accurate.
And way more accurate. That thing comes in like a cruise fucking missile. Do you know what I mean? And nobody's ever complained about him being unsafe and hurting them, except for maybe Ricky Steamboat and his larynx issues. But you mean, to give away your finisher to a man who you're wrestling, who is supposedly a flash in the pan, and he did the same for him. He fucking gave him 48 bleeding flying shoulder tackles, and Macho Man kicked out with them. Like, they completely went into business for themselves in one of the biggest events in the company's history, and totally usurped Hulkamania in such a subtle way that it wasn't even notable or realized. It's only when you look back in hindsight, you're like, wow, there's some infighting in this ring, and it's in company fighting. It's not, you know, it's weird, but it's very subtle, but it's brilliant. It's also the tapestry of the business and why we love it. There's shit going on that you're not always aware of.
Do you think, Jay? Oh, sorry.
No, go on, Joe.
Just going to ask Jay there. Do you think it was like a shared hatred of Hogan that
their friendship was born of their friendship was born of an utter disgust that Hulk Hogan can drop in anytime and basically steal their girlfriend, which was the apex of the company, which was the big belt. Hulk Hogan did his best, politically speaking, to keep that top strap off the waist of Macho Man Randy Savage. It's unquestionable. It was given the men who didn't deserve it before it was given to Macho. Simply because if that thing was put around his waist, how are you going to get it off? When we turn around and say, yes, this is what we want. Like, when the people speak, you know what I mean? But this is the interesting duality of this situation is that through Hulk Hogan's jealousy and covetous nature of the largest prize in the company, it gave us the greatest run of a belt in 10 years. The OIC strap's history far outweighs the Big Eagle, or whatever you call the fucking thing. Like, look at the men who wore the OIC. For me, the WWF's heavyweight championship of the world was the Intercontinental. I mean, it's a good looking belt, but around the waist that it was, it's fucking beautiful. And only because the wrestling behind that belt was beautiful. And even in a schmaltzy kind of way, Honky Tonk's year run mightn't be a clinic of professional wrestling as an art form, but Jesus Christ, it was a long-term storytelling we're not usually in, you know, it was almost like their TV title. You always seen it. It was weekly. The IC strap was always presented. And just go down the 10-year list. Go down from that the Reggie Classic IC. Just read the men who had that belt around their waist. It is a who's who of the best in the business. Now read the Big Eagle or the Winged Eagle fucking belt. It is not a who's who. I mean, even around the Warriors' waist, I couldn't give a fuck. It was that IC strap. You know what I mean? Every time it was around Rick Rude's waist. You know, it was around Honky's waist. It was around Macho's waist. It's who's who of the best wrestlers in the business. And because Hogan coveted the big one.
Mm. Yeah, good point. I suppose we should look, before we jumped onto Warrior there, we should have looked at how does a guy as iconic as the Macho Man become more iconic? And at the King of the Ring, we get the Macho King when he defeated Hacksaw. And I'm just thinking, like, this character, this iconic character, and then we go and put a crown on him. And you're just thinking, we've just lit another rocket here now. What are we going to do? We're off and running. Joe, what was your memories? King of the Ring and The match against Hacksaw and stuff like that.
I don't have much memory of the actual King of the Ring itself. I do of Macho King, which of course broke my heart because he was healed then. You know, like I couldn't. You know, I was only a kid, Jay, so it was yeah, it was heartbreaking to see him turn heel and, you know, get rid of Elizabeth for Cherry and that kind of crack there. It was heartbreaking. But like looking back on it now, it's just marvelous. Like, it really is marvelous to watch. And as you said, to go from Macho Madness to, you know, Macho King, and you're just like, good. And of course, he embraced it, you know, completely and utterly, and played it up like no one else. Like, and just amazing to watch. And as I said, it culminated in one of the most emotional moments ever in pro wrestling, where, as I said, grown men were weeping in the stands, you know, and it was amazing. It was a great way to finish that whole run as well. Like,
yeah. So then, Jay, to look back, I mean, you were talking about the Warrior there and the match he had with him, and you know, that pin where he has his foot up on Macho's chest. It's such an iconic image in professional wrestling, really, isn't it? Because it's if there was ever a definition of men to do the business, that image is iconic, really, isn't it?
How much and how generous Macho Man was in that match. I mean, just like we said in the other one, and I hate to make everything about the big man, but unfortunately, you can't speak about him in that particular era of wrestling because he was the centerpiece from fucking 87 to 91. How generous a human Macho had to be for the bigger picture to offer up every important tool in the shed and to understand that all of these things are just things. Anybody can do them. They only matter when they're in my hands. And to humbly offer them up to something as ludicrously insane as Warrior it speaks volumes of him as a worker from a psychological perspective. Like, if I'm going to have to go out, I'm going out fucking all guns blazing. I am going out like a comet hitting the fucking planet. Everybody, even like the hushed tones when a man pins you with his foot on your chest. I mean, if he had that match against anybody else, it would have been a kick out at 3.5. If it had been anybody else, it wouldn't have went down like that. I mean, it's psychologically understand how important that is from a competitive perspective. It's almost, if with anybody else, it'd be like shoveling your fucking career into the fucking fire. With him, it's like, they're just things. I'm the Macho Man, and I will turn it on whenever it's time to turn it on again. And like I said, he wasn't wrestling Warrior in that match. He was wrestling the fella 2 fucking matches above him on the card. Warrior was a passenger in the whole thing. There's no question about it. Like, Warrior was a passenger in every match he ever fucking wrestled. It's a reflection on whoever Warrior was wrestling at the time as to how great an athlete they were at the sport they chose. And Macho Man, it's probably my favorite match. I mean, with the exception of the Rick Rude one, it's apex cartoon wrestling. It's pure escapism. And it's Macho Man. I mean, what, the fucking cowboy hat and the bleeding jacket and the tassels after him walking down to that music with that fucking screaming banshee outside. You know what I mean? And we've said it again. And the culmination and then panning the camera around fucking 3/4 way through and Liz is sitting there. I mean, he lost the match, but he won just by being who he is. He won. Warrior didn't win that. Like, whatever, he didn't have to retire. I mean, which would have been nothing to him anyway. He retired 6 times a week. You know what I mean? Well, I consider that Macho Man being put onto that desk is wrestling's greatest travesty/tragedy. For Vince McMahon in his audacity, and I know where this is coming from. Let's put all the pieces together retrospectively in hindsight. There was somebody in his ear who said, he needs to retire, brother. Look at his hairline, brother. He's looking old, brother. Really? Really? He needs to retire. Have you seen his physical work? Well, he's looking too old, brother. But you're going to hire Sergeant Slaughter again? He looks like he was born a granddad. Don't talk to me about the truth or the bullshit. You don't want him in the same sport under the same spotlight after the mega powers collided in the same fucking auditorium as you, simply because we as fans know the truth. And watching Macho Man in the ring is like eating fucking, it's fillet steak. It's fillet steak cooked in butter. It's
unreal, yeah. Joe, I remember that moment, that scepter to the head that exploded like a flower bomb. And like, I just seen this, you know, when you think of a scepter, like, and this thing just went into a million pieces, and half of it stayed in the hair nearly, you know what I mean? It was just like that was such a shock and awe. I remember watching that going, oh my God, he's after taking this guy's head off. And it was incredible, you know. Of course, we get the kind of the little kind of the romance and the love story and the switcheroo. Sherry's berating him, absolutely slapping him around the ears, and
you fucking loser.
As only Sherry can do, and we love her so much for it.
So much.
And the next thing, this brunette petite girl comes back out of ringside. Hope she bought a ticket, by the way, and comes into the ring and comes back, and the love is rekindled again. It was a romance, as they say, made in heaven. And if we knew then what we knew now, it was a romance made in heaven when you think about it. So he moves into a non-wrestling role as a broadcaster, and as Jay alluded to it, you know what I mean? You're telling this guy to retire, he was basically still better than 90% of what's there and probably 95% of what's incoming. And it was kind of just a weird move, you know, but it culminated at SummerSlam with the on-air wedding, the match made in heaven. And he doesn't get married on the cheap. Sure, he doesn't.
Well, there was nothing cheap about that, man.
No,
it was all glitz and glamour, 24/7.
Yeah. So then we kind of go a different direction, and a man that we also love on this show, one Mr. Jake the Snake Roberts, comes on the scene, and no less befriends the Undertaker, and made his presence by hiding a live snake in the married couple's wedding present, culminating in a match and culminating in that snake bite, which I'll never forget, and I'm sure Macho didn't either. I just always have visions of that. He's tied up in the ropes, and this snake is just chomping away on his arm. And I think even Jake Roberts at that stage kind of crapped himself a bit because he couldn't get things to release, and it was crazy. And I heard there was I heard a good story about this backstage. I think Jake told the story on one of his shooting interviews where he had
Hogan.
he had pitched to Macho Man the whole idea of the snake bite, you know. Macho Man going, what are you talking about? And apparently Jake pulled down his trunks or his jeans or something like that, and he got the snake to bite him on the leg to prove to Macho Man that there was no venom and that he wouldn't die.
Savage wouldn't trust him, and he was like, is that thing defanged?
No, I trust you, brother.
He said, is that thing defanged? And he was like, yeah, it is. Yeah. I don't believe you. I want you to bite you.
Show me.
Yeah.
Like we talk about Macho Madness, but when you can imagine the madness of that locker room, you know, and the simple thing about it is Jay could have just pulled a switcheroo and brought out a different snake. You know what I mean? It didn't have to be the one that he tested on himself. But
I'm not trying to kill you on telly, brother. Of all of the truths I've ever told, this is the truthiest truth. Please believe me.
Then we it's just crazy when you look back at it. And I just remember when they did get the snake off, there was just these two holes in his arm and like the blood oozing out of them. I was there going, good Lord.
The horror on people's faces as well in the crowd. Because it drew, like if it hadn't drawn the blood, you wouldn't have seen such horror. But because it drew blood, people were like, Jesus, this is legit. He's fucked.
Then we his relationship with Liz hits a bit of troubled water, and they're going through a separation. And we kind of get this feud with Flair, a kind of an on-screen feud that kind of mimics somewhat the separation. And then Elizabeth made her final WWF appearance on April 19, 1992 at a UK Rampage pay-per-view. Savage defended the belt against Shawn Michaels. So yeah, it was an interesting time from there. I'm sure that must have been a real tough time from separating for Liz, because, you know, as crazy as he was and as controlling as he was, you know, he had lost the love of his life when you think about it, you know.
Yeah, there was definitely a deep love there. He expressed it in ways that you shouldn't. You know what I mean? As you said, he was very controlling. He was you know, in pretty much everything he did, he was OTT, like, and you know, so his deep love, he expressed it, you know, arseways, he really did. But there was definitely a lot of love there, you know, and you know, so it must have been a very rough time for him, but to go through that, and you know, and still have to, you know, still be paired with her for a while, for some
in his own insane paranoid way, he wasn't wrong. He knew the business he was in, and 80s pro wrestling wasn't a normal business.
I know what you mean. Like, it was crazy times, but like, there's, you know, maybe like, because we're looking back retroactively, and you know, society has moved on and stuff like that. Maybe we're being a bit harsh, but like, I don't know. It just it
is unsettling. I'm not saying it isn't. It
Yeah,
absolutely is. But in his own misguided, like, he absolutely loved her.
Oh, there's
That's
no doubt.
unquestionable.
There was a deep love there. He just expressed it very
Possessively.
wrongly.
Yeah, but when you love something too hard, sometimes you destroy it, you kill it. And he also knew the consequences of letting her be friends with the people in the business he was in at the time. And sometimes you can protect something so hard that you destroy it. And maybe that's there, you know.
Yeah, I think, Jay, you alluded it before in a previous episode, saying that, you know, if we look back now, what we know now, back till then, you know, he's the one who kind of kept that control there and stopped her, you know, going into that Shark Tank, really, and then becoming meat in a blender, basically, you know.
Well, let me put, like, if I put it again, I want to make this perfectly clear. The stories coming out about him and her absolutely happened. He did lock her up in the fucking, the dressing room. He did insist on having his own dressing room for her. But at the same time, he was also in love with her, and she was in love with him. And, you know, when you're in love with something as innocent and dove-like as a young Elizabeth, and she was younger than him, and you know, your business is swimming with sharks. You don't let a dove fly with sharks. You don't. And it was misguided, and it was wrong, and he could have approached it a more sane, rational way. But the simple fact is, sane and rational were not genetic makeups of the Macho Man as a human, which is also why he is so incredibly amazing to watch. There's a volatility to him which came from who he was as a person. Now, we can't have one without the other.
Yeah, but
they're inseparable.
As you know yourself, lads, like, there's a fine line between genius and lunacy. Like,
yeah.
And he absolutely skirted that line, you know, and he fell either side of it every now and then too, you know. So you know, he just.
Well, would you let your girlfriend hang out with Hulk Hogan? Me personally, no.
No, yeah, exactly. You know, it's, you know, and not just him. There was plenty of other batshit bastards backstage too. Like,
yes.
And as you said, Jay, he knew that she was impressionable and could easily be misguided.
Naive.
Yeah. And you know, like, you kind of say, like, then you can't have the conversation like, should he have had her around? You know, really. But then you kind of say to yourself, would he have been as big as he was without her?
But I think the company insisted on her being around. Have I not read that, like, she was his wife, and, well, they were courting at the time. I don't know whether they were married pre the marriage, but the company or somebody not say she is who you need in your corner? Was it not kind of imposed on him as a caveat to, yeah, you can go all the way, brother, but that's going with you?
I don't think the character would have lent itself to a male manager, if you think about it, like, because he's the Macho Man, you know what I mean? So it had to be a female, didn't it? Like, when you think about it.
He even alluded to it in certain promos. I was watching one there before we came on, and he was like, even though I bring Elizabeth to the ring, have you ever seen her do anything or interfere in a match? No. You know why? Because I am the Macho Man and I do not need outside interference. And that's when he was going on about hot Hulk Hogan hot dogging, and you know what I mean? Well, he says it on camera. I mean, he's not. She never interfered in anything. She was just she was the frame to a picture. Do you know what I mean? The picture's nice on the wall with blue tack, but you throw that thing into a beautiful frame and it becomes something else.
Yeah.
And they couldn't have gone as far as, well, he would have found somewhere to go as far. He was going to the top end of the story. It was inevitable. And Vince McMahon knows money when he sees it. But when money walks through the door and then that follows him, he's like, now I've got money and the safe to keep it in, all in the same package.
Yeah.
Come in.
I suppose when we listen lately to some of the stories that Undertaker tells, it's not so weird about the control that he had over Liz. I mean, Taker talks about lads showing up with gym bags with 45s in it. And you're kind of thinking, like, what if you rock back after doing your match and you're there and you walk into a locker room and she's sitting over in the corner having a chat with, say, Haku?
Or Jimmy Snuka. You know what I mean?
Are you going to do?
Patera.
I'm just thinking, like, you know, maybe it's a good idea to be locking people in a broom closet, you know, just in case.
Again,
no?
All we know is that that's what he did at events in a room where he worked with everybody else. Outside of the event, when it was him and her, we don't know. He clearly wasn't locking her up at home because she was free to live her life. I mean, they divorced. They went their separate ways. And it wasn't like he went all weird and got Jimmy Snuka on the situation. He accepted the divorce. He accepted the finality of the relationship and he moved on as a human, which psychologically speaking says that a part of that aspect of the story is certainly a kayfabe situation being told by men still in the business who were around at the time, making money off this legend, which might well be 50% fact, 50% conjecture. Do you know what I mean? Like, there clearly wasn't that aspect of their relationship in their personal life. I mean, she chose to stay with him for that long. And in the end, when they broke up, he didn't go mad and do mad 80s wrestler things. He accepted it, accepted the love of his life had left him, and moved on.
And they continued to work in the same place.
And they continued to work in the same place in the next place. And unfortunately, with our new fella, it didn't go so well. But I'm probably jumping the gun. So,
so on September 14th episode of Primetime Wrestling, he drops the belt to Flair, with interference from Razor Ramon, and then we have the coming together of parts unknown and the other parts unknown, and they form the Ultimate Maniacs. Jay. This should have been money all day, nearly to this day, without a shadow of a doubt.
Like, why didn't we get more of that? Like, if Macho being put onto the desk when he didn't want to retire was one of the great travesties in pro wrestling, the Ultimate Maniacs was stole from us as fans. Imagine a match where they combine those two finishers, right? The gorilla press into the fucking little window.
Oh no, like, sorry, were they not Ultimate Madness?
Ultimate Madness, yeah.
Ultimate Maniacs was him and Hogan, wasn't it?
No, Hogan.
No, Warrior and Hogan.
Sorry, Mega Powers, wasn't it?
No, that was Mega Powers.
Oh no, I mean Warrior and Hogan was not Ultimate Maniacs.
Yeah, it was Ultimate Maniacs, wasn't it?
Yes, it was Ultimate Madness was Savage and Warrior. Oh, sorry, I'm confused.
They're built, even if you look at the figures that are coming out, it's the Ultimate Maniacs pack, and it's Warrior and Macho, yeah?
Okay, Ultimate Maniacs.
Ultimate Maniacs, yeah.
My apologies, Jen, sorry.
No, not at all. I mean, listen, with those two together, there's a world of confusion. Can you imagine those promos? We deserve more of that. They should have even had a sitcom, like, you know, the way Joey split off from the Friends and it was just the Joey show. There should have been a show that was just about them following them around, living their life, doing things in cowboy boots and fucking Stetsons. You know what I mean? Just being maniacs. I said, what are you going to do? Don't argue with them. Wait, have you seen them?
I sort of think they would have been perfect for, you know, one of those shows they do on the network at the moment, one of those round table shows, where the two of them are around the table with someone else just talking. And
but it's such a bizarre friendship, isn't it? Like, why did they get on so well? We know why they get on so well. It was hatred of the other fella. I mean, whenever they had nothing to talk about, you know what I really hate? Hogan! Yeah.
Yeah. And also, I presume the level of madness attracted each other as well.
It must have been a draw, an intensity draw. Like, the certain curveballs you're throwing in pro wrestling it's to use a pre-macho fucking sport idiom, but like it's like what?
Yeah. I kind of think when Warrior was doing his promos, Macho was backstage going, I know exactly what he means. That kind of way. When everyone else is going, what is this guy on? Like, what is he talking about?
Yeah, finally somebody gets it. It's like nobody gets it except for you two.
And there was genuine intensity with the pair of them boys as well. Like, you could tell when they were going off on one, like it was just genuine, like their brains were running like at a million miles an hour. Whereas Hogan's intensity was very much acted, and you could see like he never ever matched either of them men for intensity because as I said, theirs was genuine, his was very much acted.
Well, there's probably a reason the pair of them spent so long in the WWE doghouse when the other fella was invited back every 2 or 3 years. Come on back, all is forgiven. Why? Because I can't deal with the other two. I don't know what they're saying.
Yeah, I often wonder, like before the two of them stepped into camera to deliver one of those promos together, I would have loved if they had been rigged up with a brain scan and we could watch the way the brains are working. Like, and once it kicked in, you just see this jelly in the brain moving around. Going, okay, it was just.
It's crazy. Like that bit in Step Brothers, where they're just staring at each other with the mouth open. Did we just become best friends? Like, I mean, like all the chaos, the pair of them, the Warriors inside one dressing room, just running into walls, just smashing himself into walls. The Macho Man's just on his little bendy legs, pointing at everything in his locker room. And he hears this noise and goes in, and he's got his little squitty fucking knees bent and everything. He's looking at the other fella with his Stetson on and his fucking glitter with a crown on top of it and a scepter. Warriors just running into walls with nobody in it. And they just stop and look at each other like, yeah.
You can imagine them backstage like, did you get him to check the snake? You know what I mean? It's just
I hate the snake.
Craziness.
We deserved it. We deserved so much more.
Yeah.
We deserve so much more, and we never got it. But you know what? What we have is perfect. We have our imagination.
Yeah, it's amazing how that pairing is kind of enshrined in wrestling history, but yet we didn't get near enough. We got so little, but yet still so fondly remembered.
You know how long it did last? Because it wasn't long at all.
It was about 2-3 weeks. It was a promo. It wasn't long. Joe,
is that really only a few weeks?
It was fuck all. Like I've got a figure set up there, and I bought that figure set, and I was like, "What's this thing?" And I went back on YouTube, like, well, I'll be damned.
Yeah. But when you went back on YouTube, you had to go down about 4 or 5 pages to find that one.
Yeah. You know what I mean? And this is back when they were in the black books and the dark days. I mean, there's parallels about their careers that are astounding. But then you see them in the promo, and they're both standing there wearing matching gear to a fucking brick wall, and Macho Man's got his shades on with the Ultimate Maniacs on it, and the other fella's just like, I'm like, how are you friends? If they can be friends, there's hope for everybody.
Do you think they thought that if they stuck the two of them together, that because they were two massively intense, insane men, that they kind of cancel each other out? Maybe is that why they put them together to try and bury them together, but it just didn't work?
I think the opposite's true. I think they just looked at both of them like, I think they were friends. Like I said, the agreement that they came to in that fucking retirement match is ridiculous. I mean, you couldn't, apparently from all other accounts, you couldn't speak to the Warrior about anything in regards to his character. Yet there he is walking down to the ring like it's a Sunday stroll, and he's got a bag of breadcrumbs to feed the ducks. Do you know what I mean? Warrior and Macho Man, there was a chemistry there. They obviously got on because it's arguably one fella's greatest match, and the other fella really enjoyed it to the point where he let a guy put his foot on his chest. It defies all logic, but then again, don't they both anyway? You know what I mean? They shouldn't have been able to get on. Those egos should have cancelled each other out. There they are wearing matching gear. Yeah, dig it. I will dig this. I will dig this hard.
Yeah, it was like when they're together, a balance was brought, wasn't it? It was like it's like WWF had bottled up all the insanity in the business and put it into a tag team and said, "Now we'll just park that over there, and you guys just go off on that pathway," you know.
It was probably something they came up with. I'd love to hear the phone calls. Like Vince picks up the phone. Yeah. What? Who? The pair of them? Together? That's good shit.
Or I could imagine the creative meeting where Patterson and Briscoe or whoever it was there at the time going, do you know what? I have this idea. I'm thinking of putting Warrior and Macho together. And Vince is going, what? Just, what do you mean? Do you want to finish Hulk Hogan off with a full heart attack? What are you trying to do?
I'd say it was something more random. The pair of them were probably in a monster truck painted up in some fucking wrestling gear out in the car park of a venue, just so having the thing up on two wheels and all. And Pat Parsons out looking out the window in a meeting with Vince. He goes, "You're never going to guess what I'm watching."
Yeah, and you can imagine them telling Hogan and Hogan going, "Yeah, I'll roll with that. That's a great idea. They can kill each other from the inside out. It's all good. So long as I don't have to deal with them, it's all good. I'll stay over here with Slaughter and Yokozuna and guys like that. You guys go ahead." Absolute craziness.
Yeah, we deserve more. We deserve more.
They don't give us enough footage. Sure, they don't really when you think about it. They make us wonder.
Yeah.
So, January 1993, we're off and running with Monday Night Raw, I should say. And Macho's there as a color commentator. And I always remember back to that time, I was kind of excited, but I also felt hard done by because I looked at Macho on commentary, and again, he just brought the craziness like it didn't end, you know. But I also, as we alluded to earlier, I felt he still had so much more to offer on the other side of those ropes. And I was often wondering why the hell was he on a commentator's desk? So I kind of felt a little hard done by. Joe, what was your thinking around that kind of time?
I think that's when I stopped watching wrestling for a while, lads, to be perfectly honest. Because my boy wasn't in the ring anymore, and I didn't get to hear that music and see him come down, pointing at everybody and everything, and I do remember being bitterly disappointed that he was no longer in the ring. And I do think I probably did take a sabbatical around that time and just went, what's the point if he's not wrestling? What's the point of watching? And that. So look, as I said, and I said it at the start, he went on to defy what WWE thought of him and had an excellent run a few years later. You know what I mean? So it was a stupid, very, very stupid move. And I think Jay alluded to it there that there was some politicking done backstage. This lad's too good, and I don't like it. I want the entire spotlight on me, and
that don't work for me, brother.
Yeah, so do something about him. Like, the only way to stop the Savage from stealing the show was to not let him be at his best. So stick him behind the desk instead of letting him, show off. As I said, just the way he moved captivated you. So stick him behind the desk where he's seldom on camera, and let me go out and take all the spotlight to myself.
I do remember back in those initial stages of Raw, though, because he was on there and he was still such a character and all, they went to that commentator's desk a lot more in terms of footage and stuff like that. So he was still there like an on-screen character, if you can remember, because
sitting there in ring gear he never got to use. When you're still buying ring gear to sit and talk, I mean, shot from the head up like some kind of fucking 60s fucking Ed Sullivan character. Like he wanted to be in that ring and it fucking killed him. And you know what? On hindsight, again, like a byproduct of Hogan's bitterness being the IC title, having the greatest run of champs ever, maybe that bullshit fueled who Macho Man went on to become in the next segment. But on that desk, he doesn't know how anything. All he knows is how to be the best. And on that desk, he was probably the hottest commentator since Jesse the Body Ventura. He doesn't know how to turn her off. He has no second gear.
Yeah. So September 13th in Germany, he has his last match in WWF. It's a tag match where he tags up with, and we talk about that royalty, Jay, that mid-card royalty that we talk about all the time. He tagged up with Bret Hart versus Owen Hart and Jim the Anvil Hart Foundation Neidhart. and
Shots
it's kind
fired,
of
baby.
and it's kind of like, I suppose it's kind of really a fitting match, really, isn't it? When you think about it, because you've Brett in there, Owen in there, who everyone beloved, of course, and obviously Jim the Anvil, who we love affectionately on this show, you know. So yeah, an interesting end. At the end of October, his contract expires and he leaves and signs with rival WCW. And Joe, this is where you take it up. This is where he goes out and he points the finger again and gets involved in everything. The madness erupts again, and this is the fuck you, Vince McMahon. This is what you let go.
That's it. That's exactly what I was going to say. It was a real middle finger to Vince McMahon and the other higher ups in WWE that said, you know, you're past it, pal. And he just went in. He goes, "I'll fucking show you who's past it." Just fucking, you know, and had a complete renaissance. You know, he was just, you know, he was unbelievable in WCW. He really was.
Yeah. I suppose, as Jay alluded to, even wearing the commentator, the ring gear at the commentator's desk was obviously a subliminal message that he was sending to Vince as well, to saying, you might think I'm finished, but I'm not. I'm still here. You know what I mean? But then WCW, Joe, what's your memories in there? Some of the stuff that comes to mind.
Well, of course, you have to go with the Hogan heel turn. Of course, always comes to mind, because that bash at the beach, I think it was, wasn't it? You know. Yeah. Where Hogan dropped the leg on him, and then as I said before, his run with DDP, that series of DDP was fantastic as well, and and then he had another kind of career renaissance later on when he disappeared for a while and came back, and he was nearly as big as Hulk Hogan. He was huge, physically huge.
Even his sweat had been working out.
Yeah. He came back. He was absolutely massive. He had the hair tied back to cover up the bald back.
Way more intense than we'd ever seen him. Way more.
And he toned down the colors, and he had and he brought the women with him and stuff like that. And he was still like
gorgeous George.
Yeah, and as you could see, he wasn't physically where he used to be, but he was still so entertaining. As I said, just the way he carried himself, like his entire career, the way he carried himself and the way he spoke, you couldn't but be drawn to the man. Like, he was just marvelous to watch. And as I said, that later on, like his later WCW stuff, you could see he wasn't the Macho Man of old. He was still able to drop that elbow though when he needed to.
And deliver that promo.
The best mouth. Yes.
It's interesting.
Intensity.
Yeah, it's interesting when you hear Undertaker talking about how he spent a lifetime protecting the character. Macho Man is in that similar type vein, really, when you think about it. He was always on 24/7, never off, and like protected it all the way. You know what I mean? Even didn't matter whether he was on commentary, didn't matter if he was doing a job, didn't matter, if he was winning a belt, doesn't matter. He was always on at that same level of intensity,
I put him up there. I have a serious issue with Macho Man because, again, hold on, give me 1 second. I have a tinfoil hat that has just been refitted. I don't think we ever got to see who he was. I think from the get-go, we got to see who he portrayed. I don't think he'd ever once let the veneer drop in public from when he was coming out to Pomp and Circumstance and letting George steal his woman. I don't think for 1 second, I don't think he left the house not being Macho Man. I think when he was in the house, he was Randall Poffo, which is a great wrestling name to begin with. But I don't think what are you in 82, 83? Right the way up to the culmination of his on-screen career. Again, I don't want to jump ahead, but it's the longest stretch of a gimmick which we genuinely believe Macho Man was who we seen. I can't believe that's who he was. And if that's true, Jesus Christ, what a worker. We've seen the truth of Ric Flair behind the facade. We've seen the truth of Hardy Race. We've seen, look, it's true that the Taker was Taker in gimmick for years, but nobody did it to the level and to the intensity of the Macho One. Nobody. Like, I don't. In a time of kayfabe being dropped in the curtain column, blah 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 blah, blah, and the transition from what we believed to be cartoon wrestling in the mid-80s, right the way up to the Attitude Era, where it was all fucking beer drinking, fuck you, everybody's angry, blah, tapestry of fucking super heels. Macho Man was Macho Man every second of every minute of every day when he wasn't in his bedroom or his sitting room. When that door closed behind his house, he was on. Do you know what I mean? And in hindsight, when you look at that, Jesus fucking titty Christ, what a consummate professional.
Yeah, and no, when you talk about the consummate professional, like, he put a lot of guys over. He like put Steamboat over, put Warrior over, as you said.
His whole career.
Yeah, made DDP in WCW. Like DDP was on the up. There's no doubt about that at the time. But Savage going in that series with him and losing to him, really put DDP through the roof then. Like,
yeah.
It's kind of like when we talk about NXT and we talk about, like, let's say Balor and Pete Dunne, we talk about there's no real loser in that match. I think with Macho Man, even when he won, he was kind of putting guys over, it was a selfless kind of way to him, where
What didn't he ask for when he went to WCW, when everybody else was like, well, I want my contract to say if a new guy comes in and earns, I want the same money as him, or, well, that don't work for me. But didn't Macho Man actually ask, I want to work with the guys I haven't worked with before. I want to work with your other guys. I want to put talent over to create a tapestry of great wrestling. People need to meet me in the middle. I need them to be a feud a year and a half later when they get better. Like,
and what a statement in the WCW environment. Imagine how refreshing that must have been for WCW to hear that, when you think about what went in there and said, I ain't lying down for no one. This guy comes in and goes, give me all that mid card. I'm going to put every one of them over, and they're going to all become... Yeah. And then he goes home and he's eating a cereal, and I'd say, well, he's eating a cereal, the fingers going, and I don't think he ever switched off. I don't think we'll ever understand him fully, but I think what we've seen is what we got. I mean, he was switch.
An enigma.
I just don't know how you would leave a building and travel home and switch that off. Like, how do you go from that to go?
There is an aspect of art imitating life and life imitating art. I mean, he was most certainly not Macho Man when he played baseball. And on the way up, you're absolutely correct. At some stage, it was like, am I 49% Randall Poffo and 51% Macho, or which way does the board lean this week? There's definitely who am I this week? Oh, God damn it, this is fun. Yeah.
Well, I'd visions of him going around Walmart doing his weekly shop, and he's on his tiptoes going around the supermarket and everything, like, just like, how do you escape?
Most people, press a lemon to see if it's fresh. Macho puts it on the ground and drops 3 elbows on it. I was like, yeah, you'll do.
Yeah. I was remiss to mention that his final match in WWF was on October the 31st, where he made a save, no doubt, no less for Lex Luger against Bob Backlund, which is kind of
wow.
It's an interesting conundrum, that, isn't it, when you think about it, with what transpired later on, And Vince McMahon then announced that he had retired and left the company,
Retired my arse.
Yeah, well, Vince McMahon announced he had retired. Macho was still standing behind him, probably with the ring gear on.
Retired, redundant, it's all the same doll cue.
Well, listen, we're going to take a quick break, lads, and when we come back, we're going to have a look at some of Macho's top moments. Welcome back to the 4 Podmen, and now we're going to take a look at some of the top moments in Macho Man Randy Savage's career, and also have a look at some of the, the more ones that sort of don't sit well with us. There's one or two there. We've already alluded to them already. Obviously, the commentary abyss would be one of them. But let's kick it off. I suppose we can't kick off anywhere else, but he chooses Elizabeth as his manager. I mean, that's really our starting point in terms of moments. I already spoke, obviously, about the match with Tito, the Intercontinental match, and the foreign object and all that kind of stuff. When he won the belt, I thought that was brilliant. We've kind of already spoke about WrestleMania 3 being one of the greatest matches ever, and certainly the best match on WrestleMania 3's card anyway, without a shadow of a doubt, and was voted as match of the year that year as well. WrestleMania 4, that whole undisputed tournament, was kind of a weird one, really, wasn't it? When you think about it, it was different. It was, it kind of didn't feel, to me anyway at the time, it kind of didn't feel like the culmination of a world champion, if you like. It was a bit short for me. I didn't. I'm not mad about like kind of like knockout tournaments and stuff like that and all. They don't just do anything for me. Joe, what was you thinking on the tournament?
Well, look, once again, it was me looking back on it because I was too young to be watching wrestling at the time. But look, there was too much in it. If you get me, lads, especially that last match, there was just so much messing that like you had two fantastic operators in the ring. Why you couldn't just leave the two of them to do it is beyond me. That you have to have all the interference on the outside. And then of course, as I said, Hogan hitching his wagon to the big up and up and coming star, and he just and he did it with them. He did it with Sid too. He attached his fucking wagon to him too. So it was just like I don't mind the idea of a knockout tournament to determine a champion, but that one, like, it felt a bit rushed. Some of the matches were very short, and they're supposed to be the top guys going for this, and it was just, as I said, the culmination was bad because you had just too much messing and too many moving parts for it to be proper, a proper culmination of the champion.
Yeah, I remember even the entrances and all were kind of like, they weren't that big feel WrestleMania entrance, you know what I mean? Because we'd obviously come off the back of 3, which was huge, and you had the big entrances with the little cavalcade rings and stuff like that and all. It was massive, such a big spectacle. And then we went to this one, and the lads were literally nearly walking down steps in between the fans, which was the entrance, you know what I mean? And it was just, to me, it was kind of, I don't know, did it come across as cheap or something like that? And just,
what it felt like was a manipulated work of also rans. It felt like a lot of mid-card talent in a at a level they didn't belong in, to fill a Mania, to almost subconsciously let you know there was a void on the card, and the void was the ego. Do you know what I mean? It was no, the slam heard around the world, brother. I'm gonna get bitter again. It was almost like a also rans.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And it didn't need to be that. It could have been the new future, the next wave. It was just, it was too much on the plate.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's how it always felt to me. It's a sleeper Mania. There's some great moments and there's some great character. It was a character work, and it was like, well, this is who else we have on the roster now that somebody's missing.
Yeah, it kind of nearly felt to me. It didn't feel like a WrestleMania. It felt really like a Saturday night's main event or something like that. It was sort of like a downplay, if you like. Considering we come off the back of 3.
Yeah, because as you said, no, there was no big spectacle about it. There was nothing big and bombastic around the ring. It was just a ring, and I think it was like a fucking little WWF logo over it where they walked down the steps. You could have seen. You literally could have seen a fan just walk down and take their seat nearly. You know what I mean? It was just, it seemed to be very odd and kind of downplayed. Like, especially when you look at other Manias around it, where there was just big, everything was huge and massive. Whereas that one just seemed to be very much toned down.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose we'd be remiss if we didn't mention Elizabeth getting replaced by sensational Sherry J. That was a kind of a
shock to the system.
Yeah, we kind of got the female version of Macho Man, really, didn't we?
Who's that? Is that a sister?
Yeah, it's kind of like
she won us.
Yeah,
but it wasn't easy for her.
But when we talk about the way he got together with Warrior, getting together with Sherry is kind of that similar kind of madness, really, isn't it? When you think about it,
exactly the same thing. I mean, I think she was probably, I don't know why she was. I wouldn't mind doing a little sly half-hour or 40-minute fucking retrospective understanding of her career, because there's a lot of gaps in Sherry that I have in me understanding of her as a worker, and she's a Podmen enigma. We all love her. We all fucking go to bat for her. But I'd love to sit down for a week and try to understand her career.
Yeah, she's a unique one.
Yeah, I know she worked. I've seen her working in the ring, and she was excellent. She was a league above what else was in the ring with her, and obviously she was talented enough to be kept when Moolah in a fucking black bag wasn't fucking Montreal screw jobbing her. Do you know what I mean? The boss and the company knew we got something here. Yeah, I know she obviously got injured, and let's send her back in with what's clearly going to be the front headlight on a runaway train. It's like, put these two together. I'd like to understand that better. That's future homework for me personally. So, but yeah, no,
Sure,
Jesus, what a company, what a pairing.
But like, look at that GIF you see everywhere. Of her and Macho Man coming out and him standing up, turning around. And people that have no interest in wrestling are using that GIF for all sorts of stuff. Like,
Could you picture anybody else on that carried throne? Could you picture anybody else sitting beside him? Like,
it's marvelous. Like, right?
It is.
Whoever decided that whole thing was pure genius. Like, and to have Sherry user Elizabeth, who was much beloved by everybody, while Sherry was the complete opposite, like absolutely despised by everyone. And then that culmination at the end it was fantastic storytelling, to be honest.
The nation's sweetheart versus a Disney fucking god, or what the evil lady protagonist, like the fucking witch. She was a Disney witch in very many respects, versus Liz, who was Sleeping fucking Beauty. You know what I mean? Yeah. It was. It's
yeah, absolutely. We already touched on him becoming the king. It's not much more we can add to that.
I can add to that. Could you think of anybody who could have been as rambunctious and ran with it as hard? There was kings before Randy, but they didn't know what to do with the gimmick. I mean, if you take a look at Harley Race walking around in a purple cape and a plastic crown, he's like, watch this goddamn crap. I look like I woke up in a pound shop wardrobe. And you get this other little fucker, I'm a king. Yeah. I'm like, now I believe he's a king. Now I believe the company has a king.
Yeah, the only other person that... Oh, sorry.
No, go, Joe.
No. The only other person I can think of that ran with the king gimmick as well as Macho was Booker T. I don't think anyone else. But
he's already come out, hasn't he? He's already come out and said me and Charmel took a look at Randy and Sherry, and that's who we based our kingdom on.
Oh, really? I didn't know that, because
he did.
Makes complete sense, because before that, as you said, like King Harley Race and all that, while he embraced it and he ran with it, it didn't suit who Harley Race was.
Cool wouldn't even wear his fucking crown. He wore a crown on his tights.
Harley was a trunk and boots guy, wasn't he? Really, when you think about it.
Savage was the ideal candidate to do the whole, the crown and scepter thing, and just completely ran with it and took it to levels never seen previously.
It never really worked after him either, did it? Talk about making a gimmick your own. It didn't work before me.
Until Booker T, there was, and even since the two of them, it hasn't worked either. Like they've just, people have worn a crown and carried a scepter. Like I think of Wade Barrett and Baron Corbin, but
Owen was a king for a while as well.
Owen was a king for a bit too. Yeah.
He had a good stab at it.
Sheamus.
I like Sheamus as a king, but again, there's a ridiculousness to him and his many change and evolving gimmicks that's just more fun to watch in his progressions. Like, we worked in the Leoc, the fucking, the Gale King. You could have pushed that a little harder, but he enjoyed it when he was Great White, and he was a bit of a lampoonery there going on with him. He's been caught between many gimmicks. It's like, what am I this week? It's like, we don't know. We're going to throw shit at the wall until it sticks.
Yeah. Obviously,
Corbin kind of enjoyed it as well.
Yeah. Obviously, we spoke about Warriors match with him already being a timeless classic. The WrestleMania 8 match with where he defeated the Nature Boy to regain the gold is one that always makes the list. And then, Jay, you wanted to mention the rap album, but before you come in on that, I have to mention Bonesaw McGraw takes on Spider-Man.
I got you for 3 minutes. It's, again, jumping ahead of the conversation. It's like he says in the rap song, you know what I mean? I'm off making Hollywood blockbusters. What who are you? Where are you? You know what I mean? It's the most perfect cameo ever. I mean, if you want to take a human from a different fucking field of entertainment and throw him straight into it, they could have ran with Bonesaw McGraw as one of the actual running villains in a Macho Man thing, like in a Spider-Man movie, and it wouldn't have felt out of place. It's like he's wasted on a cameo. We need him for the next movie.
Yeah, he could have really become his own Marvel or DC hero, really, couldn't he? When you think about it.
Yeah, he was. Remember when he came out with that monster truck with the cowboy hat on it? And I'm looking at that going, right, that's preposterous. One, because cars don't have huge wheels. Two, I've never seen a car wearing a Stetson. And three, can I get one?
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose we need to touch on this. There's probably two that go down that don't sit well with us, obviously, as Macho Man fans. The Royal Rumble '93, where he lost out on the Royal Rumble to Yokozuna. That was a big disappointment for me, really. I was hoping Macho would get it,
well, Yokozuna, that was really a vehicle to put Yokozuna over.
Yeah.
That '93 Rumble. I know what you mean. Like, it'd be great to see Macho win it, but it was really a vehicle to get him over and show him up to be the massive, unstoppable behemoth that he was.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I certainly see the sense of why Yokozuna was put over in that.
Yeah.
He was a resurgence of a pre-love that Vince has. I mean, whether it be the Bundys of the world, he loves a fucking monster, and no disrespect or shame to Yokozuna, and the world of pro wrestling just thinks nothing but well about him. He loved it. He was a big softie. But to quote somebody else in the business, to beat a man, you've got to beat the man. And how do you get over any harder than Macho? Like, he's, and we also know where that feud went, brother.
Yeah.
WrestleMania 9.
Yeah. And the other thing, obviously, we touched on was the commentary abyss, as we'll call it. Just kind of, for me, still, I think we lost so many great matches, and we lost probably so many years, really, where he could have built on what was already a legacy. And was really, sometimes we look at these things, like we look at Jesse Ventura and we go, no, that was perfect going into commentary. But we look at Macho Man and we go, like, when you're so superior, when you're so superior to what's in front of you and you're commentating on it. And I just wonder how difficult that process was for him, even though he embraced it as professional as he always was.
Can you imagine how galling it must have been for him to sit there in commentary and look at some of those guys in the ring that he would love to have worked with and would have had unbelievable programs.
And where those talents' careers would have went if they were allowed 15 minutes with Macho Man on any time, on any night, in any ring, in any county, in any country, in any place, at any time. He could have created a tapestry of professional wrestlers going forward, which we would laud as fucking heroes who were just thrown by the wayside because of egos. Like, Macho Man made other men. And those men were denied careers because he was denied his.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's finish off, I suppose. We need to talk about his passing. And obviously he went into the Hall of Fame as well. And I mean, going into the Hall of Fame must have been a tough one as well, because I remember thinking back to the Hall of Fame and there was a lot of talk about how he had made peace with a number of people, no less Hulk Hogan and stuff like that and all. And it must have been difficult as well. There was a number of years where they tried to make it happen and he had no time for it, really. And it's just interesting to hear whether peace was actually made or not. There's a lot of stories go around. I listened to some of Lanny's interviews and stuff like that, and he's in denial about some of the stories that go around. He doesn't believe that it was the case at all. But it's really hard to know, But Joe, what was you thinking at the time, man, when you heard he had passed? And obviously the manner in which he passed must have been, I mean, it's one thing to pass away having a heart attack, but imagine being behind a wheel as well. And
the combo with it.
Yeah, and you nearly taking your wife with you, like, you know what I mean? What was you thinking when you heard he had passed?
Look, I was heartbroken. Like, I genuinely was. But and as you said, the way he went, and so, and quite a young man, to go as well. But you know, I suppose it didn't hit me as hard as it probably would have if he was still in the ring and stuff like that. It probably would have fucking, you know, hit me an awful lot harder. But he was long
Yeah.
finished at that stage, and but it was hard to take, because when you hear, as you said yourself, the circumstance behind it, where he had a heart attack and then crashed the car and nearly took the missus with him, like you know, and it was due to his substance abuse when he from when he was he had that other comeback at WCW, like, that made his heart too big, like. But you know, it's tough, like, and the only reason he ever got into the Hall of Fame, he was only ever going to get into the Hall of Fame posthumously anyway, because they were never going to give him a mic in front of a live crowd, like, because Scott Steiner will not go into the Hall of Fame until he's dead either. You know what I mean? Because you just don't know what the hell they either of them could end up saying. So look, it would have been nice if he got his Warrior moment for a Hall of Fame, but look, it wasn't to be, and it never would have been. I don't think he ever would have been given the chance to go on a microphone in front of a WWE audience. But,
No, that one had to be posthumous.
Yeah.
It was the only way it was happening.
Yeah.
It's
the same with Scott Steiner. He won't ever be
Yeah.
given a platform by WWE, because the things he has said about pretty much everyone in WWE, there's not a home that would give him a mic in front of the WWE audience. But look, it was heartbreaking. And I remember, you know, everyone, like, for me, it was like the so-called JFK moment. You know what I mean? When you knew where you were when you heard about it, like, and yeah, it wasn't a pleasant thing to hear about it. But you know, as I said, it didn't hit as hard as it could have.
Yeah.
You know?
It is. It's sad, Jay, isn't it? When we get to a stage where we're losing the beloved nostalgia of our childhood and our growing up and our fandom, and they disappear. I remember, not dissimilar to Macho, I was hit hard as well when I heard Bossman had passed as well and stuff like that. You know, it was just, again, one of those kind of moments, you know.
One of the things that's thrown at us often and regularly in any conversation we have about anything in regards to people not into our sport is it's fake. How, after so many years, when so many men have offered up their body, their physicality, and they knew the fucking results, they knew that this isn't new. The end game is very fucking real. It's mortal. It's fatal. I mean, you touched on something there about Scotty Steiner making sure with his own mouth that he will never be in the Hall of Fame. He made it his mission to make sure that even posthumously, you do not put me in there. Macho Man almost somewhat semi-retired from WWE, and the money he could have made off. Now, we all know the rumors and blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to get into that shit. But he didn't slam the company and where he came from and who he was and what they did for him the way Scotty did or other men have. He just, like, that was a part of my life. Now it's done. Now I'm this. WCW's done. You ain't never getting me back. Now that's done. And he lived in the wilderness on his own, away from fucking everything, with a quiet dignity, regardless of speculation and rumor. And you got to respect that. But the fact that his brother got him inducted, which, let's face it, he did. And the rule, I think, was it Macho said, one of the rule was it's all the family. It's me, my dad, my brother.
Yeah.
It's all or nothing. I mean, and I've even read reports from the accident that he did as much as he could when he had his banger in the car to make sure that nobody else had a fucking catastrophic fatality. Do you know what I mean? He had the wherewithal to make sure that loads of people didn't die when he died. Now, I don't know, this is hearsay and conjecture, there's no footage of it, but this is the going story, and I'm sure that the forensics read the scene and said, look, he did a great thing. He had a banger in behind the wheel, and he did as much as he could to limit the damage possible. Like, it's when you talk about your Rushmores and you talk about your greats, who are you going to talk about that isn't Macho Man Randy Savage? He met all the best as their equal in the middle of the ring in his tenured career. He held every accolade that you could put around him, and he held it with dignity. He was the ultimate promo man. He was a professional wrestler, which instead of letting his ego make him an asshole, when he went to WCW, he looked down the card and said, who can I bring up with me? Who can I elevate at any given time? I don't want to wrestle these chumps I've wrestled for the last 10 years in another company for money. That's absurd. I want to see who you got now. I want to test myself every single time I get in those turnbuckles. I want my business to be brilliant.
Because like when he was in WCW, he was only ever a transitional champion. He only ever held on to the belt for a few weeks before he gave it up to someone, you know what I mean? So that's another thing that proves your point, Jay, that he wanted to, you know, he wanted to help other guys. So why
he
not?
Wanted his business to be great. And that might come from his very humble beginnings when his father was running a fucking outlaw territory. Do you know what I mean? That those guys, Randy Macho Man Savage made his own name in this career. Most men are given their name or they're given their accolades from day one to day end. He made himself. Well, that's very rare in the sport. I mean, he's up there with the Shawn Michaels of this world. His gimmick is the tapestry of his gimmick from the start to the end, and his evolution of a character, whilst always remaining fucking Randall Poffo.
Yeah, his approach to the business and his forward thinking was way ahead of his time. When you think about it, he was so far ahead of his time. Yeah.
He fucking loved it, and he loved us for loving him. He should have been the guy doing conventions. He should have been the guy. I mean, we've all got pictures of famous guys holding their belts and paying money for their autographs. We didn't get that with Randy. I mean, he was born Randall Savage. Randall fucking Poffo. He died Randy Savage. I mean, he never broke kayfabe. In those 10 years, how much money could he have made doing the conventions and the scenes and the circuits? Did we see them? Does anybody have a fucking picture of Randy holding a belt?
Yeah. Wouldn't he be today the top of your list if you wanted a cameo? I mean, wouldn't you pay to get a 30-second call off that guy or a video, you know what I mean, about your birthday or Christmas or something like that, you know? I could just imagine how popular he would have been on Cameo, and probably could have charged whatever he wanted. When you think about the people that are out there in Cameo now and what they're charging and stuff like that, I mean, Randy Savage, to get a 45-second snippet off him would be absolutely legendary, you know?
Yeah, but he didn't even do the cons or the festivals. He didn't do any of that.
Yeah.
I mean, he allowed Randy Savage the gimmick at the consequence of earning a fucking shitload of money. If I offer you integrity in one bucket, which is empty and won't pay your rent, or a bucket full of fucking money, which will pay everything and pay for everything, Randy chose integrity. He died with integrity.
Yeah, he brought a new meaning to taking your ball and going home, didn't he? And home he went, like, you know.
When it's done, it's done. No 4 ex-wives, no bleeding divorce settlements, no nothing. Yeah. Randy Savage probably died the most elusive, secretive enigma of a professional wrestler ever. Yeah. And to know how famous he was at his apex, and to look at the dignity he retired from the business, that's...
When you talk about that apex, Jay, let's not forget how popular he was as the spokesman for or ambassador for Slim Jim.
Slim Jim!
Massive. Like, that was huge. Yeah. That transcended wrestling. Everyone knew who the hell he was. Like, you know,
he brought his own
Slim Jim. Like,
his advertisement or his advertising endorsements moved with him from a different company to a different. When he walked out that door, he walked in with Snap a Slim Jim. He brought so much money, but all he cared about was grapple from that first lock up to that last pin. That's all he cared about. Everything else was the accoutrements of fame. Yeah. Like I said, he's a charismatic enigma. He's everything every wrestler on the planet wishes they were, hopes to be, and wants to see.
Yeah. Well, we can't sum it up really any better than that. Lads, as always, a pleasure. Head over to YouTube, Dynamo Podcast Network. We are the 4 Podmen here every week, bringing you these episodes. This has been your Macho to Madness look at Randy Savage from 3 men's personal point of views. And we will talk to you again real soon. Cheers, guys.
Dig it.